Anyone facing challenges with the Department of Justice would be wise to visit the Department of Justice website. You can reach it by just going to justice.gov and scrolling onto the news section. Friday, May 28th, the Department of Justice published some information about its budget for 2022. And that's really pertinent information for anybody who is under a government investigation or facing a challenge that could lead to a plea hearing or a sentencing hearing or potentially a sentence that could lead them inside the Bureau of Prisons. Those of you who may have forgotten civics from high school studies, you know that our government has three branches, and those branches include the judicial system, which is the courts that will prevail over a finding of fact. There's the legislative branch, which provides over how budgets are allocated, and there's the executive branch. And all of these three branches work together for anybody facing a judicial system, a sentence or a criminal charge or anything. And the more a person understands how it operates, the better that person can begin engineering a pathway to the best possible outcome. Many people, when contemplating or facing a criminal charge, the only thing they're focused on is the sentence. But the reality that every person should consider includes what options exist. And the more I know, the more I can start launching an initiative to help myself. So this article here talks about budgets and how much money is the executive branch, the Department of Justice, asking from the legislative branch, which is the Congress who appropriates money to fund the Department of Justice. And here we're seeing in 2022, the president submitted a budget for 2022 totaling $35.3 billion. I mean, you can do the math on just how much money that is. 35 billion divided by 365, 35 billion divided by 365 it's like $100 million a day. You know, it's just a massive amount of money that is going to be allocated toward what? Toward launching more government investigations, towards launching more prosecutions, towards funding the prison system. And that's what I want to talk about, because a lot of people, when they're facing a charge, and I'm talking particularly non-criminogenic people, honest people that make some kind of decision during the course of business that results in their facing a criminal charge. The more a person knows about the system and the earlier a person knows about those options, the more prepared that individual becomes to engineer a strategy that will result in the best possible outcome. And the best possible outcome isn't always the outcome that we want. What we want is just to, be able to turn back the clock and make some kind of decision that will result in us being in someplace else, or choosing different friends, or making different decisions in business that doesn't put us into this situation. Unfortunately, nobody can turn back the clock, but what we can do is look forward. And if we want to understand what's coming, we should look historically what has happened in the past. How has the Department of Justice allocated these funds? Well, this, according to the Attorney General who leads the Department of Justice, this budget proposal advances the Justice Department's three overarching goals. One, keeping Americans safe. So think through your mitigation strategy. In what ways is it working toward that overarching goal? If you don't know how to do that, then give some more thought to what you're doing. Just don't simply outsource to your defense attorney to architect your mitigation strategy. Create something that shows what are you doing to keep Americans safe. Adhering to the rules of law, that's another important subject matter. Think, does your mitigation strategy advance the Department of Justice's goal of adhering to the rule of law? And three, seeking equal justice under law for everyone. This is what the Attorney General Merrick Garland stated. Now, one of the lessons that we can learn from the sales profession or business is that if we can help somebody else get what they want, we can get everything that we want. And this is what we have to take into consideration when we're contemplating or engineering a mitigation strategy. According to Attorney General Garland, these funds will strengthen our ability to counter international and domestic terrorism, Okay, well, that's probably not going to fit into a mitigation strategy. Support our efforts to curb violent crime. That one, on the other hand, could. How? You've just got to be creative. Enhance our enforcement of voting rights and other civil rights laws. Well, maybe not the voting rights, maybe so, but civil rights laws, that's something we can work toward. Protect our nation from cyber attacks, maybe, potentially, and double our resources dedicated to addressing gender-based violence and the support of survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault. Okay, the more I can weave these broad macro concepts into my overarching mitigation strategy, the better off I am going to be. They say our request will increase public safety through investments in policing and criminal justice reform. That is a crucial topic for anybody facing a charge. Criminal justice reform. What does that mean? How can I position myself for the best outcome with regard to criminal justice reform? As well as by dedicating funds to combating gun violence. Importantly, this budget makes a down payment on improving access to justice, a prerequisite to equal justice. The department looks forward to working with members of Congress on both sides of the aisle to help secure its timely passage. These were the kinds of strategies that really empowered me as I was going through 9,500 days in prison. I always looked to the future and contemplated, what am I going to see down the road? How can I use my time today in a manner that will help me advance possibilities of engineering my pathway to liberty at the soonest possible time? I don't mean the time that I want, but the soonest possible time. Let's continue looking at this budget, and at the end of the video, I may give some ideas of how this would have influenced me. At the Department of Justice, the budget would provide more than $1.5 billion to combat international and domestic terrorism. That's an area that I don't know anything about, and so I'm going to move beyond that. But there are some things that are particularly important here that I could use and that you could use in a mitigation strategy. $2.1 billion, an increase of $184 million to combat gun violence. Okay. Interesting. $177 million over the fiscal year 2021 appropriation to reinvigorate federal civil rights, including to reestablish and expand the Office for Access to Justice and to support the Community Relations Service with conciliators in local communities. That's interesting. $1 billion, an increase of $486 million to address gender-based violence through the Office of Violence Against Women. $1.6 billion, this is huge here, an increase of $669 million. I mean, that's almost 40%, to implement further reforms to the criminal justice system and continue critical investment in implementation of the First Step Act of 2018. That is a massive red flag for you. If you're going into the system, you have to understand more about the First Step Act and how this $1.6 billion in annual funding is going to impact your life. Not necessarily today. You've got to be thinking that you're engineering a true pathway to emerge successfully. And that means look down the road. Think about your life, not today, but what about next month? What about next year? What about 3 years from now? What about 5 years from now? The sad reality that all of us who have gone through the criminal justice system know is that once somebody gets targeted for a crime, that it has lingering after effects that influence you in many different ways. So we have to understand this First Step Act and what are the implications of this First Step Act. We offer a lot of information on our Prison Professors website. We encourage you to look at it and find more. You can look right up here really simply. You can just go to this website right here and go to the section here on consulting menu at the top and scroll there, and then just scroll down these different articles and blogs here, and you will read about the First Step Act. And I think I think I have it because it's such an important subject matter. I look at it. Let me just scroll down here. First Step Act and compassionate release. See, this is an important subject, so you want to read all of these articles and learn as much as you possibly can about how this act opens doors, opens mechanisms that anybody can be thinking about to improve their outcomes. Now, this act was signed by President Trump in 2018, but it has not had the funding that has allowed it to advance all of the programs. But that's changing in 2022 with $1.6 billion, an increase of $660 million. That's more than nearly $2 million extra every single day of the year will be going into this First Step Act. And so we can scroll down here and talk about advancing inequities in the criminal justice system. The department's budget request addresses the need to ensure equal justice for all Americans. The budget request prioritizes improving community relations through the Office of Justice programs. The budget request establishes new programs for community-based alternatives to prison. What? Community-based alternatives to prison. Think about that, and think about how your mitigation strategy is taking that into consideration. It expands the Part B formula grants and increases funding for the Second Chance Act program. Well, if you don't know anything about these different programs, you are not going to be using your mitigation strategy to the best of your ability. The department will implement Executive Order 14006 by transferring federal prisoner detention detainees from privately operated to alternate state, local, and federal facilities with an additional $75 million. Finally, the budget continues the historic investment of $409.5 million by the Bureau of Prisons in the First Step Act. So $409 million, that's more than $1 million a day, specifically for implementation of the First Step Act. Well, what do you know about the First Step Act? If you don't know anything about how this act is going to influence your life, you can't start sowing seeds today to put yourself in a position to reap rewards from this. The fiscal year 22 budget invests over $1.6 billion to address inequities in the criminal justice system in America, an increase of $669 million over fiscal 2021 levels. Well, our team at Prison Professors will be continuing to learn more about this budget and how Congress responds to this budget. We will also be talking about what you or what our audience should be using, or how our audience should take this into their calculus as they're navigating a mitigation strategy. And remember, a mitigation strategy doesn't only influence sentencing. It should influence every stage in the journey, from before a person is charged during the risk assessment stage. If a person is charged, consider what mitigation strategy should I use in helping me engineer a decision on whether I plead guilty or go to trial. What are my resources? Understand every aspect of the system. 3, how am I going to use this strategy in preparation for a pre-sentence investigation report? This PSR report is going to have enormous influence on a person's life. What should I do about it? What about the sentencing hearing? In what ways does my mitigation strategy incorporate these different components that we just learned about from the Department of Justice? How about while I am in prison? How will my mitigation strategy put me in a better position to advocate for myself when I no longer will have a defense attorney and I simply have to be thinking about myself? Next, what about how is my mitigation strategy positioning me for the earliest possibility of liberty at the soonest possible time? We saw that the Department of Justice is going to expand its use of alternative to incarceration. We want to help people understand what they can do today to sow seeds for a better tomorrow. And if that makes sense to you, we encourage you to please subscribe to our channel here at Prison Professors and make this a part of your daily educational tool. You can ring the bell and be notified every time we publish a new video. You can visit us at prisonprofessors.com and simply go up to this section here on blog, and you'll see that we're publishing content regularly with an aim of trying to help as many people as we possibly can position themselves for best possible outcomes. Of course, you could also look at our YouTube channel, which we want you to subscribe to. You just simply hit subscribe when you go on there. I don't want to hit that. But we just produce an abundance of content with hopes of helping you get the best possible outcome. And if you want to talk to one of our mitigation experts or learn more on your own, just come here. You can just hit a free consultation and speak with one of our experts. But we do ask that you subscribe. My name is Michael Santos, and on behalf of our entire team, I just want to provide this Department of Justice updated briefing with hopes of helping you. Thank you.